Rain hammered the city like God himself was beating drums against the sky. Lightning split the darkness, and thunder rolled so loudly that the ground beneath my feet trembled. Umbrellas darted like frightened birds. Cars splashed dirty water across the pavement. And the glowing glass walls of the crystal hall gleamed like a palace built from frozen moonlight. Inside, music roared and applause exploded. A celebration for the man the world now called the youngest bank CEO in Ghana. But outside, in the cold pooling rain, I stood alone. Water soaked through my wrapper, dropping from my eyelashes, running down my cheeks, until I couldn't tell what was rain and what were tears. 2 tall security guards blocked the entrance, their umbrellas raised like shields, their eyes cold and unmoving. "Madam, instructions say you remain outside. Guests only." Guests. The word cut deeper than any blade. I lifted my chin, though it trembled. "I am his mother." The guard looked away, avoiding the truth in my eyes. Rain soaked my gray head scarf, the fabric clinging to my skin, and my feet trembled inside my old leather sandals. Through the shining glass, I could see Kwame, my only child, my heartbeat, the boy I carried on my back, while selling cassava on muddy streets to pay his fees. Now tall, confident, wrapped in a navy suit that glittered under white spotlights. He smiled widely as cameras snapped in flashes of silver lightning. They pinned a gold medal against his chest. People cheered. Officials raised glasses. Journalists fought for the best angle. And he never turned. Not once. Not even when the wind howled. I watched him shake hands with powerful men, pose for pictures, laugh like he belonged to a world that had no room for mud-soaked sandals and torn wrappers. The world he chose over me. My breath shook, shallow and weak. My knees buckled beneath the weight of years. And I steadied myself against the cold metal railing. Just when my vision began to blur, the slam of a car door echoed through the rain. A sleek black SUV pulled up beside the entrance, its headlights slicing through the storm. From the back seat, a woman stepped out, her presence strong enough to command the sky itself. Her hair, braided with threads of gold, framed a face carved from storms and survival. Eyes sharp as lightning, cheekbones proud, posture straight and unshakable. Her voice cut through the rain like a blade of light. "Aunty Adjoa?" My heart stumbled. My breath caught. 40 years of silence suddenly cracked open. "Ama." My voice rasped, weak with shock. She walked toward me quickly, holding a large umbrella above my head as if shielding royalty. When her hand wrapped around mine, warm, firm, familiar, the years dissolved. I saw us young again. 2 girls laughing barefoot under mango trees, running through village dust, dreaming of futures bigger than the sky. But time had stolen everything. Her path had soared into power. Mine had descended into struggle. Her voice was gentle but laced with strength. "Come with me." No mother stands outside while others celebrate her child. Before I could speak, she linked her arm through mine and guided me toward the entrance. The guards stepped back instantly, fear flickering in their eyes, because everyone in that hall knew the name. Ama Kusi, the richest philanthropist in West Africa. The woman who changed nations. The glass doors swung open. Warm light washed over me, driving back the icy rain that clung to my bones. And when we stepped inside, silence fell like a thunderclap. The music stopped. The laughter faded. Glasses froze midair. People turned, eyes widening, whispers sparking around the room like electricity. And there, on the shining stage, Kwame saw me. For the first time that night, his face broke. His smile collapsed. His body stiffened. Shock carved deep lines across his proud features. The night that had been built to humiliate me began to twist in a new direction. One none of them could control. Because the truth I had buried for decades, was finally rising with the storm. And it would burn brighter than any chandelier in that glittering hall. The silence inside the crystal hall stretched tight. So tight that even the chandeliers seemed afraid to sway. All eyes followed us as Amma guided me forward, her hand firm around mine, as if daring anyone to challenge the truth of who I was. Kwame remained frozen on the stage, the metal glinting against his chest, like a crown won through borrowed pride. His fiancée, Nora, stood beside him. Tall, elegant, draped in a shimmering gold gown. Her expression tightening as whispers rippled across the hall. She leaned close to him, lips stiff with irritation. Why is she here? She didn't lower her voice. The words sliced through the room like broken glass. My stomach knotted, but I lifted my chin. Amma's voice was sharp, controlled, unshakable. She is here because she is the mother of the man you are about to marry. Gasps flickered across the hall. Nora's mother, a woman with diamonds heavy enough to break her neck, stepped forward, face twisted in displeasure. Could she not have come dressed appropriately? Her eyes scanned my soaked wrapper, my worn sandals, the rain clinging to my skin. The shame burned like fire across my cheeks. But Amma's grip tightened around my arm. She stepped forward, voice low but thunderous. Do not mistake wealth for worth. The hall froze. Even the cameras slowed. As if afraid to capture a world cracking apart, Kwame finally moved. One slow step off the stage. Then another. His eyes refused to meet mine. As if the sight of me was a mirror he feared. He stopped inches away. His voice quiet, too careful, too rehearsed. Mama, you should have called. The words hit harder than the rain outside. My breath trembled. I did call. My voice shook, but I didn't hide. Many times. He swallowed, blinking fast, pretending that pain wasn't tightening his jaw. I'm sorry, I have been very busy. My laugh cracked open. Raw and wounded. Busy becoming a man the world can worship, while the woman who carried you on her back waits in the rain like a stranger. A stunned murmur rippled through the crowd. Nora stepped between us. Eyes cold. Voice sharp as broken stone. Kwame has worked too hard to rise above his background. Tonight is not the time for emotional scenes. Amma turned slowly, and the fire in her eyes made my skin prickle. Background? Her voice tasted like thunder. The ground beneath your heels is soaked with the sweat of the women you insult. The hall erupted with frantic whispering. I felt my chest tighten. Memories clawing from the dark corners of time. I faced Kwame, my voice barely above a breath. Did you truly wish to erase me? Did I embarrass you that much? He closed his eyes, pain flickering across his face. But silence was its own answer. My vision blurred with tears, as the memory of another night, another storm, forced its way into the present. Flashback, 35 years ago. It was raining then too. I stood in a crowded hospital corridor, holding my husband's cold hand, as he struggled to breathe his last. His accident had stolen everything. His voice, his future. And the father our baby would never remember. When he finally exhaled his last breath, the world went quiet. Just like tonight. I held 1-month-old Kwame tightly to my chest, promising him I would be both mother and father, wealth and comfort, shield and strength. I sold everything. The sewing machine, the farmland, even my wedding jewelry, to pay for his schooling. I worked sunup to sundown. Bent over charcoal stoves selling roasted plantain. Hands blistered, skin darkened by smoke. Feet swollen until they bled. Kwame never lacked a uniform. He never missed a school trip. He never went to bed hungry. Even when I did. He became the pride of the town. The child everyone said was born for greatness. And I believed it too. Until the day he left for university. And his goodbye hug felt more like a door closing. Back to present. The memory dissolved. Leaving the weight of heartbreak heavy on my chest. My voice cracked through the silence. I carried the world on my head so you could stand on a stage like this. But when the rain came tonight, you did not look back. One tear escaped down his cheek. Just one. Alma stepped closer to him. Her voice measured. Kwame, do you know who paid your secondary school scholarship? When your mother could no longer afford even the exam fees? He looked up sharply. The school board. Alma shook her head slowly. It was me. A shock tore through the audience. Kwame staggered back. As if the truth punched the breath from his chest. Nora's eyes widened, furious. Why would you hide something like that? Alma's eyes burned with the quiet rage of a woman who has buried too much truth. Because your mother refused to take charity. She insisted on paying every Sadie back. And she did. Every head in the hall turned toward me. But I kept my eyes steady. Alma continued. The child she sacrificed everything for climbed so high that he forgot the hands that lifted him. Kwame pressed a hand to his forehead. Shaking. Crumbling under truth. The room watched him. Watched us. Like witnesses to a storm they had never expected. And then, from the back of the hall, a voice shouted. Tell them the truth about the land. Gasps exploded. Chaos stirred. And the night of humiliation began to twist into something far more dangerous. The storm outside was nothing. Compared to the storm now rising inside these walls, the shout sliced through the hall like a blade. Turning every head. Freezing every breath. Camera crews rushed forward. Lights flaring so brightly that the room glowed like fire. Journalists surged like waves. Microphones pushed forward. Voices colliding in desperate hunger. What land? Is there a cover-up? Is the CEO involved? Was the bank complicit? Security guards scrambled to control the chaos. But the truth had already escaped its cage. Kwame stood rigid. His face drained of color. Eyes wide with the terror of a man who thought he buried his past in silence. Nora tugged at his arm urgently. Don't say a word. We will handle this privately. But the crowd no longer cared about privacy. They could smell scandal. And scandal feeds hungry cameras like raw meat to lions. Alma stepped forward. Her voice a deep calm against the storm. If the truth must come out, then let it come with clarity. All eyes locked on her. Kwame's breath tightened. Panic vibrating in his bones. Alma, please, he whispered. But she did not stop. 10 years ago, she said. Her words striking the room like thunder. The Royal Crescent Bank funded a land development project in the eastern villages. The hall buzzed with electricity. That land, she continued, was taken from farmers who had lived on it for generations. Forced out with promises of compensation that never came. Journalists gasped, fingers flying feverishly across keyboards. Nora's mother sputtered with outrage. This is false. Completely slanderous. Alma turned to her sharply. Your husband signed the agreements. The documents are sitting with the Ministry of Lands as we speak. A wave of shock rippled through the hall. An elderly man in dusty worker clothing stood trembling near the back. Hat crushed in his hands, voice breaking. They took my farm. My father's farm. They said it was for development. But we received nothing. They chased us with bulldozers like animals. Pain cracked his voice. And the hall shuddered with it. His wife stepped forward too, tears streaming. We lost everything. We sleep under plastic sheets now. While you celebrate wealth built on our bones. The hall erupted. Voices clashing. Cameras flashing. Guilt and rage colliding like storms. Kwame staggered back. His chest rising in rapid, gasping breaths. I didn't know, he whispered, voice breaking. His words were swallowed by the noise. Alma's gaze was unflinching. But you benefited. You never asked where the money came from. Kwame pressed both hands to his face. As if trying to hold himself together. I only signed the final authorization for the investment package. Nora jumped in quickly. Yes. Exactly. He didn't steal anything. He only approved what the board prepared. Her voice was desperate. Cracking under pressure. Alma stared at her without blinking. Child. Signing the knife is the same as stabbing the wound. A slow murmur spread, quiet but lethal. Kwame turned to me then. Eyes drowning with shame. Mama, did you know? My throat tightened. My voice was barely a whisper. I knew the pain in their eyes. I did not know it had your signature. Tears blurred his vision. I never meant to hurt anyone. Emotion strangled his words. I just wanted to make you proud. I stepped toward him. Hands trembling. Heartbreaking twice over. Once for the village that suffered. And again for the child I raised. Who lost himself while trying to escape his roots. Kwame. My voice quivered. Pride without conscience is poison. He bowed his head. The truth folding his shoulders. The press charges forward. Reporters pushed closer. Will there be criminal charges? Is the CEO resigning? Will the bank compensate the victims? Nora shouted over them. Everyone calm down. This is being handled internally. But Alma raised a hand. And the hall obeyed. Her authority towering above the noise. Kwame must speak for himself. The room stilled. Kwame looked at me. His eyes pleading for an answer I could not give. His chest shook with sobs he could no longer hide. And then. He stepped to the microphone. Hands trembling violently. His voice was raw. Shredded by guilt. To every family who lost their land. To every farmer whose life was destroyed. To my mother who stood alone in the rain while the world applauded me. I am sorry. Not a sound moved in the hall. I will release a full investigation and open the records. If accountability means stepping down. Then I will resign. Gasps crashed through the audience. Nora screamed, grabbing his arm. No. You cannot do this. Do you know what we will lose? He gently removed her hand. His voice steady now. Like a man reborn. We already lost more than we could ever gain. And for the first time in years. He looked at me. Really looked at me. And whispered. Mama, forgive me. My tears fell freely. The storm inside me breaking open. But forgiveness could not be spoken yet. Not tonight. Not while so many wounds still bled. I closed my eyes. Whispering only. Do what is right now. And the hall held its breath. Waiting for the next move. The move that would change everything. The storm was no longer outside. It was here. Raging through hearts and tearing down lies. And truth. Truth had finally found its voice, the crystal hall that once sparkled like a crown. Now felt like a furnace. Heat pressed against the walls. Not from temperature. But from the tension boiling through every heartbeat. A storm of voices rose again. Angry shouts, frantic reporters. Families of displaced farmers crying out for justice. Security guards formed a human shield around Kwame. As microphones lunged forward like hungry spears. CEO resigning, confirm? Were villagers threatened? Was the eviction legal? Did you personally approve the land seizure? Kwame stood trembling. His shoulders sagging beneath the weight of a crown he no longer deserved. Nora grabbed his arm with iron fingers. Her voice dripping venom. You cannot admit guilt. Think of your future, our future. The wedding sponsors will pull out. The board will destroy you. Kwame turned slowly toward her. Eyes no longer begging, but burning. With a clarity he had long forgotten. Our future was built on lies. Nora's face twisted. Anger contorting her beauty. I didn't come this far to throw it all away. For some emotional display about peasants and farmers. The room gasped. A collective sting of horror. The elderly farmer who had spoken earlier stepped forward. Leaning heavily on a stick. Voice shaking with grief and rage. Peasants? Peasants who grew the food your rich mouth eats. Peasants whose sweat built this country. You call us peasants while you sit on stolen land. His voice cracked. And his wife held his arm. Their pain too heavy to hide. Nora scoffed, rolling her eyes in disgust. Oh please. You people and your sob stories. She never finished the sentence. A glass shattered nearby. Slipped from someone's hand. As tension snapped like a rope pulled too tight. Amma took one step forward. Her voice deadly calm. Child. You are speaking of human lives. Not insects beneath your shoes. Nora opened her mouth to argue. But Amma's gaze crushed her. You see wealth as a weapon. I see it as responsibility. The air went still. Cold, sharp, dangerous. Then Amma turned to Kwame. The world is watching now. Your choice will define whether you are a leader. Or a coward hiding behind gold. The lights glared against his face. Sweat traced down his temples. His hands shook. But something inside him shifted. Like a foundation cracking open to reveal buried stone. He stepped back to the microphone. Voice unsteady but determined. Effective immediately. I resign from my position as CEO of Royal Crescent Bank. The hall exploded. What? This is unprecedented. Illegal, he can't do that. Cameras charged forward. Security shouting over the chaos. Nora screamed. Her voice shrill with fury. You fool. You ruined everything. Do you think she will take you back? She is nothing. Her finger stabbed toward me like a knife. I felt every eye swing to my face. Waiting for me to shatter. Amma's steps echoed like thunder as she moved between us. Her voice erupting like flames. She is a woman who raised a son alone. With hands cracked from hardship. And a spine stronger than iron. She is worth more than every diamond on your body. Nora lunged forward in rage. But two security guards caught her arms. As she kicked and screamed. Her voice collapsing into hysterical sobs. Power had left her body. Only fury remained. Kwame stood shaking. Watching the woman he once thought he loved. Be pulled away like a storm ripping itself apart. Then. He turned to me. Slowly. As if wading through years of regret. He walked toward me. Eyes drowning with tears. The world silenced itself. He stopped inches away. Rain still dripping from my hair onto the polished floor. Then. With cameras flashing. And millions watching live broadcasts around the country. He dropped to his knees. Gasps burst around the room like thunder. His hands reached for my soaked wrapper. Clutching it desperately. His voice cracked, raw and broken. Mama. I lost myself. I lost the boy you raised. I let pride blind me. And I left you out in the rain. Please, forgive me. My heart tore open. Not with rage, but with unbearable ache. I placed my old trembling hands on his wet face. The way I did when he was small. My voice trembled like a leaf in wind. Get up, my son. But he shook his head. Refusing. Not until you forgive me. Tears spilled from my eyes. Falling into his hair. Forgiveness is not something you kneel for. It is something you prove. Silence fell thick and reverent. And then, in a whisper only he could hear. Stand, and rebuild what was broken. Not for me. For them. I lifted my eyes to the displaced families. To the elderly couple whose lives were erased. To the children watching wide-eyed. This was bigger than us. Bigger than blood. Kwame rose slowly. Wiping tears from his face. A boy no longer hiding inside a man. Amma stepped forward. Placing a hand on his shoulder. Tomorrow, the world will see. Whether your apology was words. Or action. Kwame nodded. His voice steady. Tomorrow, we go to the village. And just like that. The night that was meant to celebrate a crown. Became the night a kingdom collapsed. The storm outside began to soften. But inside. A different storm had only just begun. The next morning dawned quieter. Not bright. But soft. As if the sky itself was tired from crying. Kwame and I traveled in silence. The road stretching long and winding through the countryside. Lined with cocoa trees. Banana leaves trembling gently in the breeze. And red earth glowing beneath the morning sun. Amma followed in a separate vehicle. Speaking quietly on calls. Arranging officials, advocates, and press personnel. To meet us in the village. The further we drove. The straighter Kwame sat. His shoulders stiff with the weight of what waited ahead. For years he had hidden from where he came from. Now he returned. Not as a celebrated leader. But as a man stripped bare. As we reached the entrance of the village. People gathered slowly. Faces hardened by hardship. Eyes dim with exhaustion. Some recognized me. Many recognized him. Whispers rose. Anger flickering like fire beneath dry grass. That is him. The one who signed it. The son who forgot his mother. We stepped out of the car. Kwame's legs shook so violently. That for a moment I thought he would fall. The elders of the village formed a tight circle. Their walking sticks planted firmly in the earth. The elderly farmer from the ceremony. The one who spoke with rage. Stepped forward now. Pain carved so deeply into his wrinkles. That it seemed to shape his bones. His voice trembled with restrained fury. What brings you back to the land you helped destroy? Kwame lowered his head. Truth. The word cracked like dry wood. Truth, and repentance. The farmer spat into the dust. Repentance does not rebuild houses. His voice rose, shattering the still air. Repentance does not feed children. It does not return the bones of the old man who died waiting for justice. A murmur of grief rippled through the crowd. Children clung to their mothers. Whose faces carried the exhaustion of 1,000 unspoken battles. Kwame's voice shook. I know. And I do not expect forgiveness today. He looked up. Eyes red, trembling, and stripped of everything but truth. But I will rebuild what I helped destroy. A wave of silence washed over the crowd. Every family displaced will be compensated. New homes will be built. Land returned. Schools restored. And the project that stole your lives. It will be dismantled fully and publicly. A woman holding a baby stepped forward. Tears burning down her cheeks. Why now? Why only when you were exposed? Kwame swallowed hard. Because I was blind. Blind with ambition. Blind with pride. Blind to the pain behind my success. I climbed so high that I could no longer see the ground beneath me. But I see now. And I will not look away again. He dropped to his knees in the dirt. The same red earth I once carried water across. With him tied to my back. His breath broke. His voice barely more than a whisper. I am sorry. Silence stretched long and heavy. The farmer's fist trembled around his walking stick. Sorry, he whispered. Do you know what sorry sounds like to a man who lost everything? Kwame lifted his tear-soaked face. Tell me how to begin. The farmer looked around at his people. Then slowly. He extended his hand toward the broken fields. Overrun with weeds. Houses shattered. Roofs caved in. Begin there. Kwame nodded, tears falling freely. Alma stepped beside him. Her voice steady as iron. I will fund the reconstruction. But he will lead it with his hands. Not with his title. The villagers watched quietly. Weighing the sincerity in his tears. In his trembling voice. In the way he pressed his hands into the soil like a man praying. And for the first time since the storm began, I felt the earth under my feet soften. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But possibility. And sometimes, possibility is the first sunrise after endless night. Days turned into weeks. And the village transformed into something alive again. The air no longer tasted of dust and defeat. Hammers rang through the fields. Wood creaked under rebuilding hands. And voices rose not in mourning, but in the rhythm of labor and hope. Kwame worked beside the villagers. Not giving orders. Not hiding behind officials or men in suits that he carried bricks on his shoulders. Until sweat soaked through his shirt. He lifted heavy roof beams. Until his hands blistered and bled. He knelt in the dirt. Until mud stained his knees. Every dawn. He was the first on the site. Every night. The last to leave. Some days. The people watched him with suspicion. Other days. With silent acknowledgement. Pain does not disappear because someone apologizes. But step by step. Brick by brick. Something began to shift. Not just the land. But hearts. Even the farmer who once shouted with fury. Quietly placed a jug of cool water beside him at midday. Without a word. Forgiveness is not a door that swings open in one motion. It is a gate that creaks slowly. Inch by painful inch. The breaking point. On the final day of rebuilding the first row of houses. Kwame collapsed to the ground. Hands covering his face. Body shaking with sobs he had buried for years. Perhaps it was exhaustion. Perhaps release. I walked to him slowly. My cane tapping gently against the earth. He looked up. Eyes red, swollen, pleading. Mama. I do not know how to live with what I have done. I knelt beside him. My old bones screaming in protest. And cupped his face in my palms. The way I did when he was small enough to fit on my lap. My voice trembled. Then live with what you are doing now. He shook his head, tears spilling. Will you ever forgive me? The wind whispered through the fields. Children laughed in the distance. A rooster crowed across the farmland. And I finally felt the weight of 35 years loosen. Just a little. I smiled. Soft and tired. But real. I already have. He collapsed into my arms. Crying like a child who finally found his home again. The villagers bowed their heads respectfully. Giving space to a moment that did not belong to the world. But to a mother and her son. That evening. As we stood near the new houses. A sleek car rolled to a stop on the dusty road. Nora stepped out, dressed in luxury that looked painfully out of place against the red earth and clay walls. Her voice was cold, but threaded with regret. "I came to say goodbye." Kwame nodded, calm and steady. "I hope you find what you are looking for." She looked at him for a long aching moment, tears shining but never falling. "You became someone I don't recognize anymore." He didn't flinch. "No." His voice was quiet, resolute. "I became the person I should have been." She turned away, heels sinking into soft dirt. Car door slamming like an ending. And just like that, the last piece of his old life drove away and vanished into the horizon. Weeks passed, and the village once broken now stood tall again. Homes rebuilt, land restored, a community reborn. A ceremony was held under the open sky. No chandeliers, no golden arches, no cameras flashing like lightning. Just the earth beneath our feet, the wind carrying songs of joy, and faces glowing with hope. Kwame stood before the crowd, voice steady with humility. "To everyone I failed, thank you for allowing me to rebuild beside you, not above you. If I am to lead again someday, let it be with hands stained from work, not from greed." The villagers applauded, not with thunder, but with warmth. And then, as if heaven itself was watching, the rain began to fall. Not harsh, not punishing, but soft and gentle, washing over our skin like blessing water. I lifted my face to the sky, letting the drops run down my cheeks. Kwame stepped beside me, holding my hand, the same hand he once released. "Mama," he said softly, "I will never leave you standing in the rain again." I squeezed his fingers gently. "The rain is not always punishment, my son. Sometimes it is God washing us clean." We stood there beneath the open sky, the village singing, children dancing barefoot in the mud, men and women laughing with arms wide open. And for the first time in many years, I felt peace settle into my bones like sunlight after storm. The rain washed away the last of my pain, and the soil beneath my feet, the same soil from which everything began, felt like home again.